What's up, electric people? Thanks for joining us. It's Ty Williams. Got a special episode for you today. We got Doug Cartwright on the show. Doug is a career door-to-door seller. He is the founder and CEO, I guess, of Alchemy Sales Coaching. He's an author of a book, and he is a big, warm, present dude. So most of this is going to be very applicable to my sales leaders and salespeople out there. It's a lot about mindset and kind of simple tools and tactics you can use to get in the zone. One of the things that he kept saying is you don't have a sales problem, you have a personal problem that's manifesting itself in your sales. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, sit back and enjoy this episode with Doug Cartwright. The street is where we create. We call it suburbanpreneurship.
Mixing big company resources with an entrepreneurial spirit.
This is Electric People. I always try to have somebody make my decks for me, like my presentation decks. But then I found that I can't like write it in a note and then give it to somebody because I don't know if the information, until I see what it looks like, I don't know what information to put in there. So I can't say slide 1, 5 bullet points, slide 2, because how it looks changes it. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, so I always end up being like coordinating with someone. I'm like, hey, I'm going to send you a deck. And then I'll usually get in there and design most of it myself, or I'll draw it and then have them finish it, or I'll just end up doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's also people that they're like, oh, I need to learn design. I'm like, no, like it's not a prerequisite. It's just the one thing I happen to be somewhat decent at. And so it helps me.
Yeah.
But
it seems like it sparks a lot of like intuitive creativity through you, like working through the design and like
working through the design helps me figure out the content.
Yeah. That's
so
interesting.
So like if I were to write like I've done some like blog posts or articles and stuff, and I'm like, I can't just sit and write. I have to like design it out and then fill it in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, well, let's get rolling, dude.
Yeah.
I do an intro after, just so
Cool.
you know. So once you go, then I'll do an intro kind of on the episode and stuff.
Cool.
But well, thanks for coming and hanging out and sitting down today, man. Kind of impromptu.
It kind of worked out, right on cue. Was down San Diego and decided to pop in on my way back up.
Yeah, I found sometimes when I schedule things like far in advance, it's hard to make it happen. But sometimes if it's like, hey, I'm around today.
Yeah.
Like literally the last couple episodes that I've done, it's like people coming through town. So I'm like, come sit down, dude, get on the mic.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's important to like make room in your life for the magic, like the magic of like the synchronicity and just the randomness of life is. It reminds me of the quote. I wish I could give proper credit, but it's life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
It's gonna come to me who said it. Have you read anything on like Tony Hsieh or the Zappos guy?
I know who he is, and I kind of know his tragic death and ending, but I never got into. I know he has like a popular book out, or a popular book.
Yeah, and I haven't read that, but he. So part of Zappos culture is it's like based on like serendipitous encounters. Have you heard this?
Cool. No.
So like the campus is like designed for people to bump into each other and for like. Ideas to kind of be. It sounds kind of hippie, but he Tribal Leadership is one of their. It was like one of his favorite books, and our Western U.S. sales division used to be called Tribe. It's from that book, Tribal Leadership. Like when I learned about it, I was really fascinated with the ideas. It's kind of like an offshoot of the 5 levels of leadership. It's a little bit different way of looking at it, and Tony Hsieh liked it so much that they bought like all these rights to it and they offer it for free, like on their website. And everybody that works at Zappos has to like kind of become indoctrinated with the tribal leadership thing.
Yes.
Which is a crazy story because then Dave Logan, who wrote the book, ended up becoming a friend. He's been on this show, came and spoke to our group, but it's basically on kind of like that, like allow like structure, but then be present enough to capture the moments that come like as a result of the preparation.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring this up because I was literally just like journaling on my life, and I've been able to pinpoint how making certain decisions in my life, like going to this event or stepping out of my comfort zone or trying something new or going to an event. I remember I went to a summit event, a summit series. It's like an entrepreneur wellness group. I remember I went to an event by myself and I didn't know anyone. It was a really scary event. And at that event, how I was able to meet people who then have played major roles in my life and my growth and my development. And it's just like the smallest like detail, choosing to like lean into courage and fear and the connections and opportunities you make because, you know, of the one synchronistic moment.
Yeah. I think about that a lot with obviously this job.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like Electric People is primarily about just people making an impact. So I want to talk about sales coaching and all that. But most of the people that come talk to us and sit in the chair, they have a really strong background in door-to-door sales.
Yeah.
But I always think about that because I tell people that I would love to have, well, I don't know. I would love to have arrived at this career path because I was a methodical like strategist, and you know what I mean? Like we had Jeff Curl on from Stance once, and he talked about how, you know, they selected socks, and it was like through this like most like it's socks, but it was like the most careful, strenuous like market analysis, and where's the most white space, and where can we like extract the largest margins. And I went through it, and I was like, I had a buddy that I snowboarded with that did it, and that's how I got here. Literally, like some of it is to me like sheer dumb luck. Like it's literally like, wow, I happened to know the right person when I was 21. And there's a million other things. You stuck to it. You know, you followed through. There's a lot of other people that didn't do that. But I always like to wonder, like, was it that chance meeting that I grabbed onto, or would it have come to me another way if I missed it? You know what I mean?
I think about that all the time because I got recruited. I mean, perfect analogy with your story. Like I got recruited when I was 20 years old at the University of Utah at a career fair. While I was supposed to...
Who recruited you?
This guy named Greg.
Okay.
I won't use his last name. Terrible human being. Like the worst human being ever. You know,
Greg the scumbag. Okay.
Yeah, sleazy, dishonest.
I was going to say, we didn't, back in the day, we didn't recruit much out of the U of U. I've tried it.
Yeah.
And we didn't, it
was
didn't.
never really hit.
Well, and it kind of like, you know, U of U and BYU people assemble and like congregate in a certain area. And it was always kind of hard to figure that out at U of U. So I was surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
But.
Well, I got recruited at 20 where I was on campus where I had just gotten sent home from my Mormon mission. I got sent home early off of something that was very minor. Like I tell people, I'm like, hey, I got sent home for this. And people are like, wait, they sent you home for that? And I'm like, crazy. And so I, you know, confessed some things on my mission that I believe were minor. Didn't think I was going to get sent home. Get sent home. I'm at the University of Utah. Like, I guess I'm going to enroll in school this semester. Might as well. Get recruited off a booth, random booth, University of Utah, by this kind of sleazy guy. And I remember when I met him, like, something's off here. I don't trust this dude. But I remember feeling like, keep kind of following this breadcrumb. And ended up selling a couple accounts.
Was this to sell smart home?
This was, still Apex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, still Apex.
So it would have been what year?
It was leading into the first year of Vivint.
So 11 or 12.
Yeah, it was end of 11. End of 10, I got recruited going into 11. And
do you know Corey Sistrunk then?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like when he was doing some of his best work.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Corey does amazing work, but that whole, like, he really had a career jump during those years.
That rebrand thing is amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember actually when I got recruited, you know, I sold a handful of accounts and I wasn't going to go because I didn't trust my manager. And as I started to kind of produce well as a rookie in the preseason, he's like, hey, I want to introduce you to my regional. I'm like, cool. His name's Casey Baugh. And so it brings me to this guy, Casey Baugh's house. And I meet Casey Baugh and I'm like, oh, this dude's solid, like integrity, values, family. And 2 weeks into my first summer selling ever, Greg got fired for stealing prescription drugs from a customer's house.
Jeez.
And so he was out, and then like Casey was my like direct line.
Wow.
And so it's just, I was supposed to be on my mission. One day, random at the U, random booth, you know, didn't really trust the dude, but kind of kept going, and then get introduced to Casey Baugh and, you know, changed the whole trajectory of my life.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. And I think everybody can like pinpoint back to that. It's a I don't know if it's a productive or a doesn't matter thought to like spend time on, but it's fascinating. Like I have to think like, oh, had you not done that, you would be on a completely different path, or do you wind up eventually figuring it out anyway? I like to think that you probably would have figured it out anyway.
Well,
I
here's
think
what's
the universe
really
probably
wild.
Gives you more than one shot, you know?
Yeah. Here's what's really wild about that is in high school, I was a football player. I used to weigh 300 pounds. A lot of people don't know that.
I knew that, and I want to talk about that, so I'm glad you brought it up, but go ahead.
I weighed 300 pounds. I was a fat kid, but I was also pretty agile. And my high school was known for having a lot of incredible D1 athletes. Like our quarterback got recruited by LSU. Our running back got into USC in the USC days and played in the NFL for a long time. And I had pretty good grades. So I was offensive lineman, had pretty good grades. So I
And you're
wasn't
tall too, huh?
Yeah, I'm tall. I'm like 6'4".
6'4", 300, fast, and
Yeah.
with good grades.
Yeah.
All right.
So wasn't a phenomenal football player, but I was good enough.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Harvard, Penn, Cornell, Dartmouth, right, for football. And my junior year, I played phenomenal. Had a great junior year. We went to like the state semifinals, and so like these Ivy League schools are hitting me up. So we're rolling into my senior year, and I get elected to be captain of the football team. In my head, I'm like, I'm a college football player. Like I'm going to play college football. I love football. It's my dream. We get to about a month before our season opener, and I started getting really, really sick. Like hands are shaking all the time. I lose 30 pounds in 1 month, and I like don't know why. I'm like constantly sweating.
This is your senior year?
Going into my senior year, and just losing weight, losing strength, losing speed. No one knows what's going on. We get to 2-a-days, and I pass out in the first 2-a-days practice, like 2 weeks before the first game. Go to the doctor. Turns out they thought I had a hole in my heart, and like you can never play football again. So we get like a re-diagnosis. Turns out I have something called Graves' disease, which sounds really morbid, but it's just the guy's name who founded it was Graves. So it's not like,
What's his first name?
I don't even remember.
It should be that.
Yeah.
Should be like Mike's disease or
Mike's
something.
disease, yeah. Graves is a little.
Graves is heavy.
When you walk in and the doctor's like, "Hey, you have Graves' disease," you're like, "Oh, no,
Yeah.
it's not good."
It's serious or it's in the dirt.
Yeah.
It's Graves, right?
Buried in the ground.
Yeah. Versus like, Mitch's disease.
Yeah. Mitch's disease would be a little softer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get diagnosed with Graves' disease, and I'm had to miss, which is hyperthyroidism. So my thyroid is just way out of whack, and it's producing at just insane levels. That's hence the weight loss and the shakes.
And it just kind of like kicked in right then.
And it just kicked in. And so they're like, "Hey, you're going to be on this pill the rest of your life. And we advise you don't play any sports for like a month." So I missed the first 4 games, had to put on weight quickly on this pill. And so I was putting on a lot of bad weight. And so I was moving slow, wasn't as strong, lost all interest in college football. Everyone kind of pulled their interest. And then shortly after, football season ends, I have nothing left. I have like a couple D2 schools who are interested. And I'm just like, this isn't for me. And maybe 2 months after the football season ends, I go into the doctor's office and they're like, "Oh, you actually don't have Graves' disease anymore." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, "Yeah, it's just you don't have it. Like, we've never seen this before, but you
No way.
you're cured of it," and have never had an issue with my thyroid since.
Wow.
So it's like you peel back the layers deep enough, and it's like, if I don't get Graves' disease in high school, I'm probably playing football I wanted to go to UPenn, eventually go to Wharton, and
Yeah.
now I'm getting recruited at a booth.
No Casey Ball over at Wharton,
Yeah, no.
right?
He's a Harvard guy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. Yeah. It's funny to think kind of how that works. And I think, you've written a book about consciousness and like being aware of where you're at and things like that. And I think, I don't know, like I'm always torn between ascribing too much to stuff and just rolling with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially with sales. Like I think the cool thing about sales and leading people is the most successful leaders that can kind of do it over and over and over again, like that repeatedly produce the results and stuff. They do have an air of self-awareness about them, right? Like you notice that. Same thing often exists in salespeople that have done it consistently. Like one example that I always would say to the reps in like the summertime, actually I'd say it during our year-round sales stuff here too, but I would say, hey, if you've gone all day and you haven't sold, don't be aware of that. Be aware. You're affected, period, right? It's just like if you've run 10 miles, you're tired. You may not feel, but you're tired, right? And so I remember this one day specifically, like I had probably been selling for 5 or 6 years. I was managing my first team. I was in Minneapolis and I was down in Rochester. And it was funny because this guy, he owned this small alarm company down in Rochester and we were just figuring out alarm takeovers. And we just took over that town. The guy was out of town for like 2 weeks and came back and like didn't have an alarm company anymore. You got to be in town, man.
You got to stay in town.
But I remember there was this one day I was down there and, we start at 9 a.m. and I had worked all day, and it was like 7:30 and I had 0 sales. I look back on it now and it's like big deal, but in my head it was the biggest deal in the world.
Right.
All these people trusted me. All these people moved across the country. Everybody's watching. It's early in the summer. If he can't do it, I can't do it. This is all in my head,
Right.
of course. And I remember I was the most experienced person on the team. And I was like, okay, I felt my face was tighter. I was getting to the point quicker with customers. I wasn't having fun, and I remember thinking like, all right, I'm affected. Like I'm stung right now. And so personally, as the expert, I picked up the phone and I called my little brother, Jordan, and I was like, hey, I need to hear your door approach. And he was like, what? And I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
I need to hear it. I'm affected right now. I just need to hear it. And he's like, all right. And dude, my little brother, the person that I've spent the most time on this planet with, shoulder to shoulder, we shared a room growing up. Like we have worked together for 20 years and we role played on the phone and he helped his big brother through it. And literally it was like, I heard it and I was like, all right. And dude, it's the pitch I wrote. Like I know that thing in and out. Right. But to hear him say it and to hear him reset it, I was like, all right, I went out, I sold 1. And to this day, it's one of the proudest days I've had knocking doors. Not because I sold 5, but because I freaking earned that account. I worked so hard for it. And so I don't know, man. Like I think a lot of it is the ability to be somewhat present and say, I don't know how to fix it, but I know this is frustration, or this is anxiety, or this is whatever, attachment to an outcome. Once I heard somebody say the other day, you got to name it so you can tame it.
Yep.
Right. And it's that. It's like, oh, and then it's like, call Jordan. So anybody that's struggling, if you're struggling selling today, call Jordan. His phone number, no, he'll hook you up.
Yeah, I think I love that story because what it highlights is a concept I remember going through when I was selling, these rough moments of understanding that, if it's a hot day, you're in Texas, it's 110 degrees, it's 2 p.m.
Hey, Texas does hot like no place does hot.
It's being in a freaking furnace.
Yeah.
Just a hair
and
dryer.
no escape.
Yeah.
Just no, it's not even cool. It doesn't even cool down at night.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I ever went to Fort Worth my rookie year, I went outside like midnight and it was still 100 degrees. I'm like, what is going
just
on?
no rest, just merciless.
Yeah. And after a couple years, you come to realize that the hardest part of this job is not selling an account.
Right.
Right now, we all know the words. We know the tactics. We know how to overcome objections. We know how to transition. We know how to close. Right. The hardest part of this job is how excited, motivated, inspired are you to go knock when it's Wednesday, July 13th in Odessa, Texas, and it's 120 degrees, and Karen just called the police on you in your neighborhood. Like that's the hardest part of the job, is staying inspired and being in that flow state all the time. And I remember having an aha moment in Texas, maybe my 3rd or 4th year in, where I realized I was still battling. We called it the bagel monster, right? Every morning, the bagel monster. Am I going to bagel today? And it just never goes away. That kind of angst and that anxiety and that overwhelm of selling. And I'm like, doesn't matter how long you're in the industry, you're always going to have the feeling. So the goal, the mind shift for me was not to get rid of my anxiety, not to get rid of my overwhelm, not to get rid of my stress, but I need to be better at handling it. And that was huge for me because I was always trying to get rid of it. Like, I got to get rid of it. I got to get rid of it. I got to get rid of it. I'm like, no. It's the rest of my life, I'm going to experience this wide variety of emotions. That'll never go away. So my opportunity is I need to become the type of person that can handle any of my emotions and it won't knock me off center. Mm-hmm. And understanding that and thinking about it in that type of concept was truly life-changing for me, because when the anxiety comes in, when the stress comes in, when the pressure of performance comes in, I use a method. It's really simple. It's relax and release. I just relax my whole body. Just relax.
Let's do it right now. Let me drop this. All right, here we go.
Relax and release. It's my go-to. It works in any situation. You relax your whole body. Relax your shoulders. Relax your face. Relax my eyebrows. Relax my jaw. And I release, and I literally think of the energy of anxiety going through the top of my head. And then I literally just say in my head, I can handle this.
Feel really good right now, man.
Yeah. And what I've learned too,
It's hard too because you think you're relaxed, and then there's that extra level when your face drops and your shoulders drop, and you're, you know what I mean? It's like, are you airplane asleep relaxed, like head back, mouth open type stuff, you know?
And what I've learned too is, first thing is anxious people make poor decisions. When I'm really, really anxious, I'm going to make poor decisions because I'll be out of integrity. Because if I'm anxious and I have a problem I have to solve, business, relationship, health, finances, if I'm coming from an anxious state, I'm out of integrity because what I'm actually doing is I'm going to choose the decision that makes me feel less anxious, which 99% of the time isn't going to be the best solution to the problem. So I'm working out of integrity. And so it's really important to understand that, okay, my state is the most important piece of the whole equation. And so I've learned there's kind of 4 steps that people, kind of 4 levels of heightened, whether you want to call it consciousness, awareness, self-awareness. And the lowest end is going to be suppression. Something happens, I get triggered, I lose a rep, a customer cancels, right? Lowest end is suppress it. I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to push it away. I'm anxious. I'm just not going to handle it right now. I'm going to push away. I'm going to go distract myself, whatever it may be. If you suppress long enough, eventually it blows up. Second kind of low end on this scale of awareness is expression, right? Where you're very reactive. Someone does something and you kind of just lash out, or you just respond quickly, or you respond quickly to the customer, or you make a quick change, you just express yourself, and you're very, very reactive. You're not running your life is running you, right? You've heard that quote, either you run the day or the day runs you. And it's just, you're just expressing and you're reacting, and there's no centered calm of consciousness. The third level, which is actually a pretty high state, is acceptance, where something happens. It's not to your preference. You don't like it. Again, it's against your wishes per se, but you have some level of self-awareness where you're like, you know what? I'm just going to accept this. I don't like it, but I'll accept it. And the highest level is letting go. Something happens, it triggers you. You don't suppress it. You don't express and react to it. You don't accept it. Because again, if you're accepting it, you still have a preference of how it should be. You relax and you release, and you let it go. And my favorite analogy on this is, imagine you're in an elevator and you're late to a meeting and you're in a building and there's a lot of people in the elevator and you got to get to the 25th floor and you're a couple minutes behind for your podcast episode, whatever it may be. And there's someone who's at the front who keeps holding the door open to let people on. And someone comes on and they hit it open again. And then someone comes on and he hits it open again. And you're like getting angsty. Again, low end is suppression, is this guy's an idiot. What is he doing? Like, oh my gosh, like I'm not going to say anything, but like, dude, come on. I got to get moving. And you're having this dialogue.
That's the driving by yourself.
Yeah.
Talking to the idiot in front of you.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
The idiot by the door.
Yep.
Right. What is he doing? I got to go. And you're really disoriented, disrupted. Level 2 expression is you actually lash out. Dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Bro, I got to get to the top of the floor. Like, stop holding the door open. Again, dysregulated. Third highest level is, this guy's annoying me, but you know what? I'm going to accept this. I don't like what he's doing. He shouldn't be doing that, but you know what? I'm going to be the bigger person, and I'm just going to accept this. Still dysregulated. Highest phase, letting go. I am on a rock hurling through space in the middle of infinity. There's a million moments happening, and someone just happens to be holding an elevator right now. I'm going to take this moment to relax and release and let that go through me. Now, when I get off the elevator, I'm still here, centered. And now I can engage and respond and react to any problems or situations that come my way.
I love that, dude. There's always so much energy, and one of the things you're talking about is anxious people make poor decisions. They also, like, you vibrate a certain way, right? Like you emit. And one of the stories, I've told it on here a bunch of times, is 2005, Virginia. 2006. Not that you were going to fact check that, but this was freaking 2006.
2006.
Anyway, I knocked this door, and it had been a day for a lot of different reasons. And I was working, and I was gritting it out, and I was being a good worker, and I was being disciplined and all that stuff. And this woman comes to the door and opens the door, and she said, "What's wrong?" And I was like, no, I'm just kidding. I was like, I still can see her face, because I was like, Oh, I'm not fooling anybody. Like
Yeah.
I was carrying heavy stuff around I'd never seen this person before. I've never seen her since,
Yeah.
right? There's almost 8 billion people on this planet.
Yeah.
She heard me say, "Hey, how's it going?" And her first thought was, something is wrong with this person. Like, how do you know, right? Because you emit this stuff. And so the crazy thing and the importance of being able to regulate yourself in a performance environment, sports, anything where it's on you, sales, door-to-door sales, come on, right? Like we think that we've got everybody fooled, right? But really, if you don't have the ability to find that center, and honestly, man, some days are hard. Like I've found, kind of in the name of like name it so you can tame it type things, I found like when I'm out knocking, I can now get to a point where I'm like, okay, today's going to be a hard day. Like I can tell I'm not playing my best today. It's just gonna be a hard day. And even just saying that, it's like, all right, like some days are hard. That's the life we signed up for. It's not that big of a deal. It's just gonna be a hard day. I'm gonna have to pitch more people. I'll probably work longer. Probably won't be a 5-day, but it sure as hell will be a 1-day, right? You just kind of go through it. But the other thing that maybe I'd like to talk about or share with you is when you were going through those 4 steps, I thought of my relationship with my wife. So I've been married 18 years, just got through 18 years. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the first couple years were hellishly hard. Like the first year in particular, I got married so young. She was so young. Right. And like, if you were to ask me in those like first months, first year, and many marriage counselors did ask me, we went through them. And I would tell you it's her fault, dude. She's like this, right? And now I go back and I think about, kind of like this letting go thing, or like even like there's a phrase you said that like made me think about it, is when you're trying to change like an outcome, that's where it's really frustrating. And then you get to a point where it's like, oh, like I no longer have an opinion about this thing that used to drive me crazy. It's just something you do and that's it. Like, and that's it. You know what I mean? Or like, it's a hard thing to do, but I think it's one of the reasons that it's so important to shadow and be mentored. Yes. Because a lot of people think the reason for shadowing is to learn how to sell. I think the reason for like an open gym type setting, like you come in, you're a new rep, I'm an experienced rep, you want to learn how to sell. I think the best way for you to learn how to sell is to come into the office an hour before everybody else and let's rep this out 1,000 times. And I'm going to adjust your tone and I'm going to adjust your words and you're going to practice it. Because if I go follow you, inexperienced guy in the neighborhood, we may not even get a pitch off for a couple hours, right? Realistically. Right. And you're thinking of, oh, my boss is like listening to every word and that was a bad one and there was a dog and who knows what's going to happen, right? So it's like and you watch me and there's a million things going on and you may not catch it. Yeah. So, but if we're in like a one-on-one setting, we can do it. Now, the reason that you shadow me is so you can learn how to be. You can learn that like if I were to watch you knock, I would probably like walk for a couple hours and then come out and be like, oh, like he's a lot more relaxed than I am. Mm-hmm. He gets one and then he goes to the next door. I usually get one and then go get a drink. Right. Or that guy, I've never been yelled at like he did. That would have shook me up and it almost seemed like you didn't care. That's why you shadow, right? And so then you assess and you internalize. But anyway, all in all, I think that answer of kind of like those 4 stages of being, it works in all ways, right?
Totally. And on that note too, as you talk about like new reps, I think importantly, any reps listening right now, kind of the key concept here is learning to manage the system, especially in sales, right? Create a system, a perfect system, and manage the system, not the emotion. And what happens is if you don't have a fail-proof system of this is when I wake up, this is what I eat, this is when I go to the gym, this is when I study, this is when I get to a meeting, this is when I role play, this is when I start knocking doors, this is my knocking hours, this is what time I go to bed, this is what time I spend time with my family, right? And you have this system that if I execute on this system, I'll be successful. If you don't have that locked in, right, your emotions will take over. We talk about in sales all the time that people buy emotionally and justify logically. It's a very true concept in sales. Well, the same is true for us as human beings, is we will justify our decisions emotionally. We will make decisions emotionally and justify them logically. And so if you don't have a system in place to go out and execute the summer, what happens to your emotions during the sales season?
Everything.
Up, down, left, right, backwards, upside down, reverse, black and white. I mean, you're all over the place. And so again, the goal isn't to eliminate those emotions. The goal isn't to not have those emotions. A lot of younger reps think that like top reps don't get stressed or anxious or overwhelmed. Like we do. We just know how we can handle them better. And so the goal is like, okay, let's put in a perfect system for you that you commit to. And it reminds me of the Kobe Bryant thing, right? So Kobe Bryant, end of a season, he knows his emotions really, really high and he's in peak state. He either won the championship or he's so pissed off that he didn't, that he's incredibly motivated. And at the end of the season, Kobe would make a contract with himself when he was in peak state. This is my workout routine. I'm going to work out 3 times a day, 4 a.m. This is what I'm going to eat. Here's my diet. Here's my recovery. I might go on one vacation and it's going to be this time, but other than that, we're training. And then he would sign it. He would actually create a contract and he would sign it and he would frame it. And he goes, I have one job this summer. I don't negotiate. Mm-hmm. Not if or when or maybe we'll change this. No, this is what we do. So I think right now too, kind of towards the front end of the peak summer season, the best reps know their systems. They know what they're committing to do this summer. And then they just manage that system and keep their emotions as they go up and down and left and right. We all have the emotions too, but they don't allow their emotions to dictate their decision making.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking about, that's something I believe in a lot.
Yeah.
Is and I often joke because I always make I do my weekly planning at the same time every week. And it seems to be a peak moment for me because later I get to midweek and I'm like, who made this schedule? This is crazy. Like it would be stuff like, I'll just do this for an hour and a half and then I'll go straight into this. Or like days where I'm flying, I'll like book the things I'm going to work on the flight. And then it's like, I'll get to my flight and I'm like, man, I'm barely alive. Yeah. How did I think I was going to strategize a new whatever, you know what right. I mean? But I will say this, when you're in college, so there's a couple things about college that I think are really applicable. And if you can learn, because in college, your teacher actually doesn't care whether you come to class or not. Right. But you still go for the most part. Right. Like, especially as you get closer and closer to graduating, you mature and stuff like that. Your freshman year, you don't go. The other times, as you get closer, like you go. Right. And no one ever checked on me. No teacher ever had a one-on-one and said, I'm concerned about your grade. Right. It's a lot like this job. You invest, right? You have to pay for college. You have to pay for this with your guts and your energy and all that kind of stuff. But the crazy thing is this. If you have a crazy college schedule and then you have like a, end of term project and then you have finals and that, you look around like the library and people are doing really hard stuff. Mm-hmm. They're staying up all night. They're writing these thesis papers. They're exerting abnormal energy and effort into this thing. Now, it's because you kind of have a schedule, right? It's like, hey, well, you don't sit every day and be like, am I going to go to class or not? Mm-hmm. You just kind of go. And It's like, oh, I signed up for 7 a.m. class. That's going to be hard. But you just go. And then you get an assignment and you're not like, am I going to do this assignment or am I not? You just do it. And it's kind of hard, right? And so I found that for me, at least, I'm really good at following a schedule. It takes zero thought. Mm-hmm. It takes zero effort. It's just like, I'll plan my day, in a moment of clarity, hopefully, to make sure my priorities are right. And then, like, I've had a lot of people ask me, being like, don't you get burnt out? And I'm like, I just do what's on the thing. It's not, I've often joked that my body's kind of like a rental car. It's like, you just kind of schedule it and I'll try to have it, in the right place. I'll try to have it clean and like use it. And then I'll pass it on to the next person, right? Like, in not such like a crass way, but it's like, I find it very easy to follow a schedule. I find it very hard to be productive without one.
Well, I think it's so important because one thing that's true for all human beings is like, we desire comfort. Like, we want to be comfortable. We want it to be easy. It's that quote, again, I need to give the proper credit, but fatigue will make a coward out of anyone.
Vince Lombardi.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're tired, when you're sleep deprived, when you're dehydrated, when you're hungry, right, you're going to want comfort. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have that system in place, just like me, just like everyone else, if I don't have a structure or a system in place, I know what I'm going to choose. Mm-hmm. Right. I'm not going to do the hard thing.
You know what's wild? I remember I was driving out to a summer market. I was driving to Boston from Utah, and it was late at night. And I had like the first part of the drive, you go through like all your punk rock albums from when you were a kid, and you like sing at the top of your lungs. But then you get out there a couple days, and you're like, you start listening to stuff. I remember I was listening to this it was like pre-podcast. I was listening to this interview on the radio, and this guy was like he was a consultant to like high-level executive people, and it was fascinating. So he was talking about that exact thing and like how we make decisions and stuff. And I remember that they got down this rabbit hole, and the conversation is why men can be prone to disrupting and corrupting their relationships, like why men cheat, why they step out, all this stuff. And so I remember him saying this, and it was like kind of like, you know, I don't know, it was an introspective moment for me, because he said one of the things that makes men in particular so good traditionally at their jobs is their brains actually tunnel vision. Like they will do that, right? So that's why like you and me are standing on the edge of a cliff, we see 5 people jump. It's like I'm looking at this and I'm feeling that pulse. But you know, you maybe look at like my wife and she'd be like, "Are you crazy?
Right.
Don't do this." But I'm in the moment. I'm almost feeling someone pulling me off that thing,
Yeah.
right? And so you almost have this ability to like focus in on something so tightly that you can do extraordinary things. It's also the thing that can get you into trouble. And so he said there's a couple consistent things that come into place, and back to anxious people make poor decisions or whatever, but they were surprising things. So number one, physical fatigue will make moral cowards of us all. He said, number one consistent thing is they're hungry. Hungry or underslept.
Yep.
So you think about this, like, okay, I'm in an altered physical state, or like you're about to go to bed and your body's tired and it's like, I want cake. It's like, no, it's just tired. It's just trying to find something, right? It's looking for something. It's almost like, oh, that customer didn't buy. He's an idiot. It's like, no, he's not an idiot. You're just looking for something. It's, you know what I mean? So physically hungry, potentially underslept, in a different environment, hotels, conference, things like that.
Yep.
And then obviously like alcohol or something gets involved. And so you think about it and it's like, oh, there's a pattern to everything. So in not such a heavy way, like think about the quarters that you hit your goals versus the quarters that you don't, right? Like what is in play? Are you well slept? Are you well fed? Are you on a good regimen? Are you on a good mental diet? Are you surrounded with people that you know and trust? And honestly, like that's the framework. You get out of that and you're like, yeah, I was just kind of blowing in the wind and it led me to this place. And ultimately, I don't know, success is more predictable than I think people think.
I mean, you look at any top performer when they're like in flow, you're talking about your best weeks, you know, think about what's your best alarm day, for example?
I sold 8 and I
Yeah.
remember it
because
I heard people later selling 15 and I was like, no, I sold every person that I talked to
I sold.
in Charleston, West Virginia that day.
Yeah.
Literally everyone.
Yeah.
I had like 5 before lunch,
Yeah.
you know, one of those.
Yeah. And you think about that day, and you were in flow state, right? It probably, a lot of them were just happening.
Couldn't
kind of
miss.
flowing, Couldn't
Yeah.
miss. You just didn't matter what you were saying was happening. Magic
Same dang
happening.
alarm accounts at midnight. Yeah.
Ripping it, right? So you look back, like your weeks when you're just crushing, where you have insane numbers, is probably a pretty good chance you're waking up at the same time, you're doing the same workout, you're eating the same food, right? You are well slept, right? You're getting, you know, your early morning sunlight, you're hydrated and whatnot. And so I look at it like there's some major points for peak production. You know, I've got my company, Alchemy Sales Coaching, and I look at our top performers, our top 1%ers, and it's exactly those things. They're sleeping 8 hours a night. They're moving their body every single morning. Like there's no negotiation, right? You think about movement with the endorphins and the dopamine, right? I always tell people have you ever taken a gym selfie?
I don't think I have. Hold on. Let me give you a real answer.
Gym selfie.
Because I was going to the gym consistently, kind of pre-selfie.
Yeah.
Now I work out alone in my garage. It's not a good sight.
Yeah. Not a good thing. But people, when they take gym selfies.
Yeah, when you got a good pump going,
Yeah.
right? You look good, right?
Do people take gym selfies before the gym or after?
Right, obviously after.
Right. Why? Endorphins. They're confident. They're motivated.
They feel like this might be a good idea.
Yeah. Right.
They're like, I'm going to take this picture and I'm going to put it on the internet.
I'm feeling good.
I'm feeling good.
I'm feeling good.
That's right.
Confidence
People
goes
will like this, they think.
up.
Yeah.
Confidence goes up. So moving your body, you know, it's not a health tip. It's like you want to perform. Well, let's take a step back, Tyler. When's the best time to sell an account?
Right after you sold one.
Why?
Because you are confident, you've had success, you're on a different chemical cocktail.
Yep. I'll never forget. It was 2018. I'm the company sales trainer at Vivint. That's my role. I travel around offices, different regions. I had to work some with Neil Rogers and then some with, you know, Brad Rossiter. And then
Isn't it
Scott
crazy how
Bell.
different regions are like different countries?
Different companies.
Yeah, literally. It's like
different companies.
It's like I always say that with surfing. Like you come
Yeah.
200 yards off the shore and it is a different country out there.
Yeah.
You go from one region to another and you're like, these are like families. Like you guys are so different.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Completely different.
It's a great experience though. Like exposure to all of those different cultures is really valuable.
It's really valuable. So I would go and fly into like a Philadelphia and do a training for Neil, and then I'd fly and do a training for Brad Rossiter, and then I'd do a training for Scott Bell. And so I would go in, I would run their correlation, and then would knock with their reps. And Vivint kind of gave me like a nice little salary bump, and I got all the, it was great. It was a great deal for me, and I had a lot of fun because I like to travel and mix it up. And I'll never forget, I was knocking I go into a group in Missouri with a good friend, Dusty Wynn, and he's like, hey, I've got this rep who's normally a top performer, but he's in a sales slump. Can you just go see what's going on? I'm like, sure. So I meet up with this kid. I don't even remember his name. And I said, hey, before we break it down and talk, let me just watch you on the door, and then we'll analyze after, rather than you tell me what you think is wrong.
Right.
So we go onto the door, pitches the guy. He gives a great door approach. He overcomes some objections, and then it came to transition, and like his whole energetic state just went like
he
this.
just curled up in the fetal position right on the doorstep, and you're like, I've identified the issue.
Just super skittish,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And then just obviously we don't get in, and so we go back to the car, and I'm talking to him like, dude, what happened right there? He's like, yeah, what's wrong with my pitch? I'm like, nothing's wrong with your pitch. You gave a phenomenal door approach. Your words were perfect. But do you remember what happened? You tried to transition? And he's like, yeah, I just got really, really nervous. And I'm like, yeah, sales, it's a transfer of energy, right? Your energy transfer, you went nervous and you were scared, and the customer could feel it. And that's why I didn't go down. And I said, what's going on in your life? And he's like, we ended up talking. He's just like, yeah, I'm just not in a good state. My fiance called off our engagement, and I haven't been able to sell in 2 weeks because I can't even focus on the doors. And I'm like, oh, wow. So first insight for me, most reps don't have a sales problem. They have a personal problem that's blocking their sales.
Yeah. You can't hide in a performance environment. Everything affects everything, right?
Everything.
It's all connected.
Right. And then my second thing was like, well, when's the best time to sell an account? Well, it's right after we sold one. So I'm like, well, is there a way where I can work on my personal stuff? And is there a way I can get into that state, flow state? Like I just sold an account all day. Like what would my day look like if I was in flow state all day? If I felt like I just sold 3 accounts, what would my day look like if I worked every hour that way? And so that's kind of reverse engineered. What are the metrics that I hit? Do I feel that way? And I've broken them down to where it's some things you just said. It's sleep, getting 8 hours. For me, it's 8 hours. Some people it's 6, right? 8 hours. Because when you're tired, what's the only thing you think about the next day?
Yeah. Just being exhausted, sleeping, resting, putting in. Yeah.
Your energy, your voice goes lower. Your energy goes down. You're not inspired. You're not optimistic. You're not.
But
curious.
then you offset it with an energy drink. Yeah. So the best way to fix like a natural chemical problem is throw artificial stimulants at it.
Yep. And then you peak, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you crash.
Yeah.
So number 2 is hydration.
That was a
nutrition.
joke. It's not the best way. All right.
Well, I talk about that a lot when I train in groups. I say, hey, listen, we all have, not all of us, but there's a lot of people in this group who have really poor relationships with caffeine. And really simply put, you can change it really quickly. And this is an Andrew Huberman thing. If you wait 90 minutes after you wake up before you consume caffeine, all of the adenosine in your brain, so adenosine is a chemical that makes you feel tired. And in the morning, you have kind of like an overload of it. And so caffeine, all caffeine does is it blocks your adenosine receptors from getting into your bloodstream. So it just makes you not feel tired, makes you feel alert. But if you consume caffeine within the first 90 minutes, it blocks the adenosine receptors, so you kind of have a buildup. So around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock when it wears off, the rest of the adenosine comes in, and then you have that crash, and so you go grab more. And then you go grab more, and then your adenosine can't get into your bloodstream when it's time to go to bed, because adenosine is really important because it makes us go to bed. And then you get in this really vicious cycle of staying up, and you get wired and whatnot. So really simple hack.
Then your sleep's impacted. So
then your sleep's impacted. It's kind of this spiral. So simple hack, it feels like magic, but about 2 years ago, I took that advice on, and I stopped, I waited 90 minutes before I have my cup of coffee now, and it feels like magic. Like there's no wall. So it's a very simple hack for anyone listening. So diet, nutrition, hydration. The third is sunlight. Getting sunlight first thing in the morning just activates your brain and it resets your circadian rhythm. And then I also talk about the importance of like deep gratitude, like immense gratitude and appreciation. You can't be angry and grateful at the same time.
Or anxious and grateful at the same time, or bitter and right?
Yeah. All those things. The fifth is breath work. I'm a big, breath work / meditation, getting that moment for pause and clarity. There's an app, anyone who's looking for a great app, there's an app called Othership. It's a breath work app. They have sessions from 3 minutes to 20-minute sessions, and it's just an opportunity.
Othership?
Othership. Yeah, SHIP, Othership. Incredible guided breathwork sessions, and doing an Othership every day before you go out and sell, it's just going to juice you up. And then the last piece I've really, honed in is what gets me into flow state is just being in community, like being around other inspired individuals who are raising the tides and are open to being the best version of themselves and are inspired and connected and optimistic and engaging. And I think that kind of recipe of getting those things hit on a daily basis just puts you in a much better opportunity to go out and sell than if you're not doing those.
Yeah, you think about, I watched the documentary on Johnny Manziel. Have you seen it?
No, yeah, it's phenomenal.
Oh, it's amazing. So I missed it. Like I didn't catch the Johnny Manziel like era, like when everybody else did.
So
like
fun.
I'm just learned about it later. And it was amazing to watch him because like I'm not a football fan, but like it was really fun watching him play.
Yeah.
Right. Like just like creative and like iterative and like loud and kind of awesome. But you look at where it caught him, like, dude, this guy made it all the way to the NFL never viewing tape. Like most people would have gotten caught in high school.
Yep.
He was talented enough that he got caught later kind of on. But then you look at like his lifestyle and it's like, he looked at it, he was like, oh, I kind of burnt out. And it's like, dude, you made it that far on the equivalent to like sales of like not sleeping 1 hour, eating a Pop-Tart and drinking 4 energy drinks.
Yep.
You made it this far, right? Like imagine had he had, and so whenever I think about it like that, I'm like, okay, if you're an athlete and you've got a race the next day, or you've got a competition the next day, or you've got a game the next day, right? You've got a bedtime, you've got meals that you eat, you've got a trainer, you've got a workout regime, you've got it all kind of thought through. And if you're sick or don't sleep well and then you play bad, you're like, well, yeah. But for some reason, like salespeople, the performance is as like mentally demanding, if not more. And we often don't give cause to that. Like people don't self-diagnose. Have you read Leadership and Self-Deception?
I've not.
It is one of my favorite books. So you mentioned Jason. I was just talking to Jason Shaw about this the other day. So I served a church mission. It was like the only book we were allowed to read outside of like religious books. And so it was like the first like leader book that I read. It's by this group called the Harbinger Institute. And it basically talks about how this concept of being in the box. And when you're in the box, you can't like see yourself as the problem. And it's not a book about how to get out of the box. It's kind of like, hey, be aware. You're in the box, right? And so it tells this story. You've probably heard it, of this like Swiss doctor, Ignaz Semmelweis. Have you heard this story? So he had like the highest like mortality rate. He was a labor and delivery doctor, had the highest mortality rate of all the other like regional hospitals. So if you went to Semmelweis, your odds of death of your child and your spouse or whatever were exponentially higher. It's like the worst reputation ever. So they tried everything to figure this out. Like they tried, switching the shifts and the different people that worked and different medicines. And like they tried everything. They could not figure out why their hospital had such a high mortality rate. Turns out this is pre-sanitation, right? So we didn't know what we know about germs and transfer of disease and stuff. And Semmelweis spent time just before labor and delivery doing like cadaver work. And so it's so obvious to us now, but when it talks about in the book how he realized like, oh my gosh, it's me. Like I'm carrying this. I'm literally bringing it from one situation to the next. It's a very powerful idea. And so like even back to like my relationship, like when I think back on the first couple of years, like I mentioned, they're pretty hard. It was like, I was sure that it was her. I was sure of it. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my, I was the carrier. I literally carried it from one situation to the next. And so anyway, it's one of my favorite leadership books because it just talks about like it must be like some sort of like protective survival mechanism that we have where you just can't see it, right? You cannot see yourself as the problem is what's defined as being in the box. So they talk about ways to get out of it. Gratitude is a great way to do it. Labeling it is a great way to do it. If you've ever had like an argument with somebody or even like a strategic like certainty where you're like, I know we need to go this direction. And then you get out an hour or two later and you're like, okay, I'll concede. There's probably another way to do it. Okay, I'll hear you out. And then eventually you're like, that's a better idea. You know what I mean? Like, but we do that, right? We get in the box sometimes.
The moment you think the problem is out there, you've lost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The problem isn't the problem. The problem is your relationship to the problem. Right? There's, the outside world people, places, and things are under no obligation to behave in the way that you think that they should.
Yeah. Have you read a lot of Joe Dispenza stuff?
Not a lot of Joe, but I'm really deep into Michael Singer.
Oh, okay. I haven't read his
Untethered Soul, Surrender Experiment.
Oh, okay. I haven't read it yet. It's on my list.
Yeah.
Untethered Souls on my list.
That's
We had this text group once called the Untethered Souls, and it was this ongoing challenge to see if you could charge your phone in the other room, which sounds so easy, but hard, right?
Yeah.
Like hard, like especially, it's sales, it's relationships, and so you just have this anxiety that you're going to miss something. But we called it Untethered Souls.
Well, I would say
because
this
we
too
charge
on
in the
these,
other room.
these habits of like how to get into flow state. In 2016, I committed to myself that I'm not going to sleep with my phone in my room, and I charge it, in my kitchen. And it is the most. I mean, I've done a lot of habits. I've been to a lot of masterminds. I've been to a lot of summits. I've done a lot of coaching. Taking my cell phone out of my room has been one of the most impactful things I've ever done in my entire life. Because if I don't have my phone in my bed, I bought an alarm clock. I travel with my alarm clock. Like I take it in my hotel room because I don't want my phone in reaching distance of my bed. I fall asleep quicker. I'm not scrolling, bringing in junk and Instagram videos before bed. And when I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm not checking my phone and then getting triggered by a text or an information. And I've trained my body that when I get in bed, I just go to bed. Like I'm not, and I fall asleep a lot quicker. And so
like the humans, like our ancestors from 15 years ago,
Yeah.
how they used to live,
Yeah,
right?
it's crazy.
You get in bed and go to bed.
Yeah, you just go to sleep.
I tried that once, but then my wife wasn't on board. She
Yeah.
wasn't all about it. And so I was like, just sitting there, I was
Yeah.
bored. But anyway, it's a great feeling. There's truth to it, and everything does impact everything.
Yep.
Right. Tell me about your transition. So you didn't start out as an all-star seller. It was a learned thing, as I understand, right? Or did you have a high summer your first year? I thought I
So,
knew that you didn't.
My first summer, my dad died.
Ah,
Right. So it was a half summer.
jeez.
Yeah.
How old are you then? You're 20, 21?
20, it was 21. Right.
What did he die from?
Colon cancer.
Man,
Yeah.
was he young?
53.
Wow.
Really young.
Very young for colon cancer.
Very young. Right.
Wow.
So I actually wasn't going to go out that summer. So I, had like a couple preseason sales, like 13, my rookie year. Everything was going great. Then I have this pivot moment where fired up, everything's good. Dad calls us into the living room. This is spring, and is like, "Hey, guy diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. This is the reality. Like, I'm not going to live. I've got, 6 months to 2 years."
Dude.
And I was like, damn,
You were close?
really close with my dad. He was my, he coached my little league football teams and basketball teams, big sports guys, hanging out at the grill in the backyard, like really close with my dad.
How many kids?
One of 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that 50. So where do you fall?
I have a twin. I don't know if
Okay.
you knew that.
I don't know
Yeah, I
that.
have a twin sister,
Okay.
and we're the babies. We're the youngest.
So that's pretty young. So
Yeah.
you're 21 and your dad's 53
Yeah.
and one of 6. So you start having kids young.
Yeah, he got married to my mom. My mom was 18. My dad was 21.
Wow.
Yeah, they got right to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasting no time.
Wasted no time.
Okay. So I didn't know that, man. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
so it was brutal. So I went to Casey, and I was like, "Hey, I can't go out and sell this summer. Like, my dad's gonna die." And he just told me something really impactful. He said, "Hey, listen, I support you. Like, you have a lot of upside. I've got your back." He said, "If you do decide to go out, at any moment you want to come home, just call me, and we'll buy you flights to and from Utah as much as you want to go back and forth to see your dad." He's like, "It'll be on me." So I took that to my dad, and I'm like, "Hey, I've got this offer." And he's like, "Hey, I could be alive for 2 more years. Like, I feel great." He's like, "I went golfing today." Like, it's like, if you feel good, like, you should do it. So I went out and sold for about 6 weeks, sold 50. I did 12 my second week
Wow.
and kind of just rode that wave.
So correction, hot start.
Hot
Sorry
start.
about that.
Hot start. And then was managing. So he passed away. I went home around the 4th of July. He started to get sick. He ended up passing away in August of 2011. And then actually wasn't going to go back out and sell. It was kind of like one and done. I remember when I signed up to sell, I'm like, if I can come home with 10 grand, it's a win.
Oh yeah, that's the
right?
deal. That was the deal back then.
If I get 10 grand, worth it. Right?
Totally.
Ended up making quite a bit more. And then was actually going to go leave and do a startup with my buddy in San Francisco. Like, the movie The Social Network had just come out. And so everyone's like, I'm going to build an app and go to, Silicon Valley and do the thing.
It made it look a lot better with that Trent Reznor scored
Yeah.
soundtrack. It looked all cool and everything. The reality
The
is
soundtrack's awesome.
It's amazing. I actually watched that movie on a plane probably 6 months ago, and I was like,
Delta,
"This is
Delta,
great."
Delta
yeah.
ripped it again, right?
Yeah.
And so I was actually about to wrap it up. I wasn't going to go back out and sell. And then I won the incentive cruise. So I went on a Carnival cruise.
Yeah, you did.
With like the region.
You're like, I work hard. I'm going to
Yeah.
go on this Carnival cruise.
Yeah,
dude.
might as well.
Yeah.
My salute, my final farewell before I take off and do this other business. And then I had a meeting with Casey on the rooftop of this cruise ship, and he gave me 2 pieces of advice that have drastically changed my whole life. I had like $8,000 in my checking account, which was great.
So you were good.
I was good.
For the foreseeable future.
I was good. When you're college kid, you're
yeah,
good.
Yeah, man. I remember.
Yeah, I was good. And so I was going to ask him, like, where should I invest this? Like this is before Bitcoin. I'm like, should I do stocks, real estate, crypto?
It came into a little money, man. What should I offload this into?
Yeah, right. Literally, I was like going to ask him for investing advice. And so we sit down and we have this conversation. And the first part of the conversation was just really warm and just like, hey man, like your dad had just passed away. Like, how you doing? I got your back. We love you. We support you. How's that going? And then I told him, I'm like, hey, I don't think I'm going to do this job. Like, it was almost like I was giving him my thanks. Like, thank you for this opportunity. It was incredible. Because of this opportunity, the whole month of July, I was able to live at home, move in with my parents, and I didn't have to work, and I was able to spend every day with my dad before he died. And that's like a memory I'll hold dear forever. So like, thank you for this job. I was able to have that. And he, sold me on the idea, and he gave me a piece of advice. He says, hey, I want you to commit to this job for 5 years. Whether you do it for 5 years or not, doesn't matter. But if you have the mindset that you're doing this for 5 years, you're just going to make really different decisions on a day-to-day basis. He's like, go recruit a team, go build a squad, go be a regional, and just think like a regional, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and it'll make it worth you. And then he, it was during the time we were talking about the Blackstone transition, and so there was equity opportunity and whatnot, and that was really exciting. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go do this for 5 years. And then the second piece, I'm like, hey Casey, I got this 8K. Like, where should I put my money? And he just laughs at me.
Like, I'm trying to turn it into like 12K.
Yeah, that would have been huge for me, right? And he laughed and he said, until you have 50,000 liquid, only invest in yourself until you become the type of person who can make 50,000 liquid. Buy the seminar, go to the course, get the coach, do the event, do the audio programs, learn how to sell, do the sales strategy thing. Like, only invest in yourself until you have the skill set where you can make 50,000 liquid. And then once you have 50K, we can talk about deals. And that was some of the best advice I ever got. And then I took that. I got home, fired up, rounded up the troops, went and recruited a team of 40 the next year and invested, I remember I got home, I had $8,000 and I spent $5,000 on a sales training course, like right when I got home. And it was incredibly impactful.
I remember after my first summer, I had like $6,000. I hadn't got my back end yet.
Yeah.
So take it easy. And I remember thinking like, I could go to Chili's and I didn't even like check the balance.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's like,
made it.
Yeah. And it's like the things I remember, like just the early days and the transition of it, but getting that advice really early is so valuable, right? Like, just because you learn that, like, if you can learn to sell and if you can learn to lead and you can learn to manage your emotions, the opportunity to earn, it's always going to be there, right? Like, you literally have learned a skill that will bring income to you. It just depends on what you want to do. I have this friend who's been looking for a job for a while. And, I said, it was like, if you really need a job, there's always a job. Like, we hire hundreds of people a month.
Yeah.
It's just a question of, are you willing to do it?
Yeah.
And that like, for some reason in the back of my brain at all times, no matter how far like my career is gone, I love that in the back of my head, knowing like I could go sell full time and make more than I need. You know what I mean?
It's so fascinating to see that, because I stepped away from the industry in 2020. I got an alley-oop, really, what happened. I had left Vivint and left my LTIP. Long story short, Brad Ross had recruited a whole team of pest control guys, like 40 guys, like a week before summer. And so Todd calls me, Santiago calls me and was like, hey, we'll give you your LTIP back if you go train these guys for a month. So I'm like, done, so I get this hook up and kind of get this nice closing ceremony piece with Vivint. And then I went to go build an app, an app called The Daily Shifts, which is a personal development app that talks a lot about these flow state. There's a meditation, it's breath work, it's, diet, it's sleep tracking. It's kind of like this overall, it was basically my routine when I was peak selling. So I was going to create into an app form and kind of make it go in app direction and build an online course and a coaching thing. That business failed. And, but I had the confidence to go for it because in the back of my head, I'm like, if this thing fails, just give me a binder and give me an hour and a half and I'll make $1,000 in any neighborhood. And so the skill set of learning this job and this opportunity makes you recession proof.
Yeah.
Like you can go do whatever you want if you know how to do this. Because like if things really, really, really get bad, you can always go knock doors.
Yeah, and there's a love for it. Like I read when Ronda Rousey was like at the top, I read her book, and there's this quote on the back of the book. I remember I had a hardcover copy of her book for some reason. And on the back it had this quote that said something like, "I'm not afraid to fight for a living." She was like the first female fighter, right?
Yeah.
Remember early on?
She came out hot.
Yeah, and early on the UFC was like, "We'll never have female fighters." And then Dana White's like, promote this girl. She was insane. But before, I mean, she was like a jiu-jitsu like world champion, but she wasn't making, or judo world champion. She wasn't making any money. And so she literally slept in her car. Ronda Rousey sleeping in the car. And she had this quote that's like, "I can put everything on the line because I'm not scared to sleep in my car. Like I can do that life if I need to." And I look at this where it's like, man, if you're wondering, should I, try my hand at leadership? Should I go out there and try to like break records? Do it. Like you should. This is an industry where you kind of can't screw it up. You can learn, you can get better. But at the end of the day, if you learn the art of selling, you can always go back to selling. And frankly, I love that. Like I like doing it. I like that I figured it out. I like that it's a hard thing. It's kind of like my relationship with surfing. I learned how to surf late in life, and I love surfing now. It's taken me all around the world, and I take pride in that I've learned it really fast. But it's been really hard. It's not like I've been exceptionally good at it. I just spent a lot of time and money on it, and so now when I look at it, I'm like, I'm really proud that I did that. I feel the same way about door knocking, where it's like, I actually. If I think about that reality, a lot of times it would scare people, but I actually look at it like some of the best time of my life. You know what I mean? Like going out with a crew and making it happen, and just creating accounts, creating relationships. You know what I mean?
Crazy about it, Ty, is how good the opportunity is right now.
Yeah,
it's never. It's
far better than we got into it.
I'm telling
for
you,
sure.
There was 5 years where I literally killed myself. Like I grinded my teeth on the cement for 5 years.
For a couple $100 an account.
I'm telling, for a couple $100,000 a year. Yeah. Like if I was in my peak now, it's like there's 7 figures for sure. And I'm like, damn, like the opportunity now is so good. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. And you're providing a product and a service that's helping the customer save money and helping, the planet. And like it's just such an incredible win-win. You're not convincing to add. Yeah,
you have momentum.
It's insane.
You're swimming with the current as opposed to against it.
Yeah,
right.
The opportunity in door-to-door has never been better than it is right now, which is crazy to think. Yeah, because we've been in the industry for 20 years.
Yeah, but it always gets better. I remember like the early days, like my first couple years, having that scarcity mentality of like, I don't know how much longer a market can hold this. Yeah, remember having those thoughts? Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. Good luck in Rochester, Minnesota. We knocked it out, and people have been going there for 20 years since. Like it's fine. There's still a lot of people there, right? But it's one of those things where you have such a limited view of it. And now like you can look back, and it's funny because there's probably people trying to tell me this when I was younger. And now I'm the guy trying to tell people this when they're younger. Like also I was thinking like with the opportunity being better, I was listening to something today that was talking about this, but the value of your earnings when you're younger is so, I'm 42. I just turned 42 like a week and a half ago. This is my 42 mustache.
There it is. It looks good.
Yeah, and so if I earn a lot of money and I invest it, or a 20-year-old earns a little money and invests it, it's game over. Like he's going to have exponential. Yeah. Like you literally could come into one of these opportunities and work really hard for 10 years, set it, invest it smart, and then go about your life, and it'll be there for you when you're done. Yeah. And it will support you for the rest of your life, which is crazy.
You can go grind for 10 years and then go be an art teacher.
Yeah.
And you're set.
You could be a bad art teacher. Yeah, totally, dude. I love that thought. Yeah. What's your favorite thing about coaching? So now you're not in the, I mean, you're still kind of in the same world, but you've opened your aperture. You're not doing it for a single company.
So I'm not knocking. I'm actually not selling, and I don't work for a company. But I launched Alchemy Sales Coaching a little over 2 years ago with the intention of creating community of other inspired individuals who want to be the best version of themselves that happen to be in door-to-door, right? So getting mindset coaching, again, you don't have a sales problem. You have a personal problem blocking your sales. So from 2019, and you know, for those who want the full details, I share it all in my book, but really 2017 to 2021, I kind of went on like a sabbatical, like a spiritual journey sabbatical. And I had left Mormonism. I left the church, and was really for the first time dealing with the suppression of my dad dying. So a lot of that was coming up. Had left Vivint where I was like the guy. So I had like, you know,
Community and stuff.
Lost community, had identity crisis, and started working, got really deep into therapy. Worked with this Russian psychologist for a couple of years. He was really phenomenal. Worked with kind of plant medicines, got into yoga, got really, really deep into meditation, got really big into psychology. And had kind of this moment of like, oh, my people, like my door-to-door people, my community, you know, a lot of people need a lot of help. And again, you don't have a sales problem, you have a personal problem. So I went through certifications, coaching certifications, and am now bringing some of these insights back to the space. And so Alchemy Sales Coaching it's a coaching program, but we focus on the 4 areas of health: physical health, like am I strong, healthy; mental health, emotional health and relationships; and spiritual health, which is like, am I on my path to becoming the best version of myself? And so I've learned that if those 4 buckets are filled and we throw in some sales training on there, right, a natural byproduct of being in that positive state is increased performance. Mm-hmm. So we've got weekly group coaching calls. We do one-on-one coaching. You get workouts involved. We have an online university. We have a daily accountability. You talked about weekly planning. We have like a weekly planning accountability. And then we do in-person events. You know, you came and spoke at our event in January. And it's all about just peak performance. Like, how do I step into the best version of myself? What am I, you know, for the average individual in the group, right? You have those, you mentioned the box.
Whoop. Limp mic.
There. Lost the mic there. I think we're good there. Yeah. You mentioned there's the box and you don't know that you're in the box.
Yeah.
Right. So having, you know, other coaches kind of showing you, hey, you might be in this box, and helping someone step out of that, you know, so that they can find that peak performance. And so, you know, it's still growing. We're still a young company. We're up over 100% over year. And it's really special because what's happening is we're just gathering people who are committed to growth and want to do it with other rad people. So it's been
cool.
really fun.
And it's cool that it's a path that you've gone down as far as investing in yourself and knowing what it takes. And I always respect people kind of in the coaching game that have done it. You know, like there's so many people that can be trained up in coaching, and there's nothing wrong with that. Honestly, like I've received a lot of coaching from people that don't know anything about sales leadership and that don't know anything about direct sales. And it's been really good advice. I had a coaching session a couple of weeks ago, and it literally like caused a breakthrough for me. It was awesome. But there's something special about someone that has done it. Yeah. You know, like you just know them, like they know the things, they know the feelings, they know the emotions, they know how to communicate it. You know, it's one of those things where I heard this advice forever. You know, Tom Hopkins, old sales dog, right? He said, never take advice from anybody more messed up than you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, that's great. But then I look at like a lot of like coaches and things like that, and I'm like, you know, but people that have done it at a high level, there's an immediate connection there.
Totally.
And I like the people that can also like, there's not many player coaches, right? There's not many like people that can also, like there's those people that are unconsciously competent, but it's very rare to have somebody that knows how to do it and knows how to articulate how to do it. It's like 2 different muscles, and it's very rare to find that in the same person.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I'll have days where I'll have, you know, 4 or 5 coaching calls in a day, and I love them. And the first call is a, you know, young single guy who's trying to get into a relationship, and he's got these patterns in dating, you know, and he's like, how do I date while going out doing summer sales, you know, and what does that look like? And so we do that call. And then the next person's got,
that's such a hard time, dude. I remember that time, dude.
Brutal.
Yeah.
And then I got another kid who wants to step up and be a leader and recruit. And okay, how do I set up my office and structure? It's my first year managing. Like, what does my structure need to look like for my office? So I have that call. And then I sit down with another guy who, again, has issues with his mom, and his mom thinks he should get another job. And how do you filter that relationship with your mom? And then I get another one that's just like, hey, what's your door approach? Like, I need help with my door approach. And so then we go over door approach and sales tactics. And so it's really fulfilling for me to like actually, I feel like I'm still in the industry. Mm-hmm. and being able to have, with my years of knowledge on the doors, to be able to actually be like, yeah, I know the doors.
Yeah.
I get it. I get what's happening. I get what it's
yeah,
like.
it's like when there's, you think about like something like the UFC, like there's certain people that can fight, but not many of them can fight and then commentate.
Yeah.
And when you get one, it's really special
Yeah.
because they bring these insights. I'm like a big Supercross fan, and the greatest Supercross racer of all times is now a commentator, and he brings such unique insight. So it's like, I'm like, this year has been a really unique year in Supercross, and it's like, I've been watching it for my entire life. I used to go to races when I was like, before I could even remember, with my dad. And I'm learning things about it now because this person who has this expertise, who's seen it from a different angle, happens to be commentating on things, and it's stuff I've never thought of before. It's really exciting.
It's like when Tony Romo started doing broadcasts on CBS.
Exactly.
Right when he started, he's like, all right, this is going to be the play. Watch the wide receiver over here. The DB's going to come in here. And it's just, he's just calling it before.
And I'm like, what language is this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so special.
That's wild. Talk about your book and where people can find it.
Yeah, so book is called Holy Shit, We're Alive. It's on Amazon. And more importantly, I would say, with a lot of people going into the sales season, check out Alchemy. We're growing really, really fast right now.
What's the link for that?
alchemysalescoaching.com. There's an application. Our applications are open right now as summer goes in. If you're looking for some coaching, some mentorship in the industry, I do a lot of the coaching myself. We also have other coaches if you want to work on culture or whatnot, and or relationships, or we have a health and fitness coach too. And so check out alchemysalescoaching.com. There's a really quick 30-second application to even see if it's a good fit type of thing, to make sure you're in the right financial situation for it. But would really love to work with anyone who's like ready to get at that next level. So really, I would say Alchemy is for anyone who's already seen some success, and then they're kind of like, I'm not quite sure how to get to the next level. Like, my finances are good, right? I've got deals in the pipeline, but I want to take the leap. Maybe it's in a relationship, or leap in leadership, or leap in investing and personal growth. So I would say Alchemy is actually a personal development platform first, designed for those in the door-to-door space.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. That's a unique space, man. I'm glad that you can fill that niche and stay connected to the community. You're so good at it. Like,
thank you.
And you've always had a different outlook on it. I remember the sabbatical, by the way. Like, and I remember it's just like, a lot of people don't do that, right? Like, a lot of people don't go out, and a lot of people don't get connected like that. And I remember at the time thinking like, wow, like, I would never think to do that. That's crazy, or that's weird. And now it's kind of funny because you come full circle and you're like, okay, like, I found my path, I found my way. You know what I mean? And now if you can help other people, that's the ultimate. I always say, if you can lead, you should, because ultimately it's the only way you'll be happy. Like, you're built for more. And so once you figure something out, there's only so much joy and fulfillment you can get in doing something for yourself, right? I also think about that with pain. Like, okay, so you shared this experience of, what it's like to feel physically bogged down, what it's like to lose a father, like all those things. So it's one thing to have those experiences and grow from them, but if that's all it is, it's kind of just sad and rough. Right. It's really, now you're so much more relatable to other people. You can help people through it. So it's like, once you learn how to sell, you've got to turn around and invest that into other people, because once I don't know, like, you remember being a kid and playing video games and like being stuck up against a certain level, and you try and you try and you try, and it's like, man, I cannot beat this end guy. Then you beat him. And it seems like now what took you a week, you can do it in 10 minutes. You get right back through that guy, because you've almost like unlocked that, right? So I always tell like personal high performers, like, once you've beat the game, it's not fun to fight that guy anymore, because it's not hard for you. You can beat him, and then it doesn't feel the same. And so if ever you get to a point of high performance where, oh man, the earnings or the Carnival cruise or whatever doesn't feel like it used to feel, it's usually an indicator that you need to invest into other people. The experiences you're having aren't just for you. You've got to, like, everything in nature does that. Everything grows and then seeds, and then there's more growth. That's like how this world that we're in seems to work. And so I've found that with high performers, like, if you're at that level, take the chance, get into leadership, invest it into other people. It's way harder to get someone else to perform than it is to get yourself perform. You'll never master it. Right? Like, you will work at it for years and years and years. It's the most virtuous endeavor. It's the best pursuit. You'll earn well. You'll feel amazing. You'll touch lives. It's really cool that you get to be involved with that.
And I would just say too, for those listening, like, to have influence and impact over others, to be a leader, you only need to be one level above them, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I can't lead because I'm not like Ty, like, I'm not like that, so I can't be a leader. but you can have influence over anyone if you're just one step ahead of them. And the more people you can impact and help, and I think just the whole ship raises, and that's what people are looking for.
Yeah. Adam McClellan, who co-hosts this with me when he can, always says that. He's like, I'm only a couple chapters ahead of you. I'm only a couple lessons ahead of you in the book, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really true. And honestly, like, it's that step into the unknown. You probably felt it like when you first said, okay, I'm going to start coaching. Like, I wonder how this is going to go. It should always feel like there should be an eager anxiety, like not anxiety like I'm worried about the future, but there's a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah.
That's the pocket. You always want to be feeling that. If you're ever like comfortable where you feel like I've just got it in the bag.
Yeah.
I've found it, you're only a couple months away from not feeling very fulfilled. You should like Mario Andretti used to say, if you don't feel out of control, you're simply not going fast enough. Like it's one of those things that we challenge. And I just love that we're in a game that you'll never beat.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no finish line on this.
There's no finish line, right? But you keep becoming like every level you get to is better, right, than the one that you were at before.
Yeah, it's just so much more expansive, and really embracing like there is no finish line actually helped me navigate or remove a lot of my anxiety. Knowing that this thing never ends, helped me to relax. And then when I'm relaxed, I'm able to make better decisions. And when I make better decisions, I move through more smoothly. And then again, to your point, as you level up, each level, the quality of the experience enhances drastically.
You mentioned Todd. We had Todd on the show a while ago.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of this message that I sent him the other day. Todd still like recruits people.
Yeah.
Like that was his thing. I remember like I'm pulling this up. I'm not scrolling, but I want to see if I can find the quote. But it reminded me so much of Todd. It's from the book The Infinite Game. Have you read that by Simon Sinek?
Yeah, Simon, yeah.
And it's kind of that idea of like you're not the goal isn't to beat the game. The goal is to keep playing. Yeah, that's really what you're doing. And so I remember like going to his house and him not being there. And there was like other people in his home. Like he's got a lot to protect. He's got a family. He's got very nice things. And I remember going into his home, recruiting someone and leaving, and I never saw him. Like, who am I? I'm just a kid, and I'm like literally coming and going. And I remember going to his home with recruits at 11:30 at night, being like, "Hey, this guy's gonna fly out tomorrow. I've got to get with you." He's like, "Bring him over." If someone came to my house at 11:30 at night, I'd be like, "Dude, I am right."
Yeah.
And so the other day, we were talking and we were working on this recruit. He just wanted to help this guy come into the business. And so I sent him this text, and it's right in line with what we were saying, but it's from The Infinite Game. And it says, "And like all infinite games in the game of life, the goal is not to win, is to perpetuate the game, to live a life of service." It's like, that's so Todd, right? It's like now he just kind of wants to be useful. He wants to be impactful. He wants to be generous. But the thing is this, like it taught me like you don't get to a certain income level and then stop.
Right.
It's not like you get to a certain fitness level and then be like, cool, I don't have to work out anymore.
Yeah.
Because obviously what's going to happen, right? Like, and so it's really cool to see like the models from this industry of like, hey, these people that thought, oh, by the time I'm 50, I'm going to retire. By the time I'm 40, I'm going to retire. You don't do that, right? You work really hard and then you put that energy into something else.
I'll never forget. I was in a truck with Jared Young, old Jay Young, and we were driving.
Was it upside down? You gotta be careful if you're in the truck with Jared Young. There's a 50% chance it's going upside down. Do you remember when he rolled his truck and it was like the top? He literally drove a totaled truck for a while.
No.
So like he'd always park it on the big snowbanks at Vivint. I'm gonna send this piece to him, but I remember he had rolled his truck over. And then he needed to get somewhere, so like they pushed it back over, and he was driving like this like munched truck for like weeks. Isn't that so Jared Young?
Jared.
Like, yeah.
I don't think do that as Jared.
So you're in a truck with him safely.
We're driving. It was me, Brad Roster, Jared Young. I'll never forget. This was 2016, 17. And we're driving to his new home that he's building out in Spanish Fork or something. This, insane, beautiful home. And I remember I was in the back seat and I asked Jared, I'm like, Jared, what's your number? He's like, what do you mean? And it's like, there's these transactions or kind of rumors of the transactions are going to happen. Like, what's your number when you're going to be done with all this? And he looked at me and he turns his shoulder over the driver's seat and he goes, Doug, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be climbing a mountain. This never ends. Like, there's no number. I'm going to be climbing a mountain the rest of my life. And my initial response to that, I was like, what do you mean? Like, there's no ending. Like, what am I working for? Like, I was panicked. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean there's no end? And I was stressed about it because I was playing the game of like, if I get to the number, then I'll be good. Then I'll be okay. And then really embracing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, the best insight ever. Once you fully accept that the game doesn't end, there is no finish line, the quality of the game goes up drastically because you're not rushing, you're not trying to hustle, you're not trying to grind, you're not trying to cut corners. You just move with the pace and you allow life to unfold, and you can appreciate and enjoy the moment so much better. And when you're present and in the moment and enjoying it, your ability to enhance the moment and influence it for good goes up drastically because you're not rushing through it.
Yeah. And I was just, as you were saying that, I was thinking, like, again, the world and the universe is kind of the model for everything. Nothing stops ever, right? Nothing stops. Like, and the other crazy thing is, I think we want so badly to know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, think about it. Like, I asked Adam this question the other day. I interviewed Adam McClellan. We've been co-hosting for like 5 years. I'd never interviewed him. So the other day I interviewed him. It was really fun. And I said to him, and this would be a good question for you to think about too, just because your life has taken such a different path than you probably thought it was going to 10 years ago or whatever. And so I said to him, I was like, all right, you're on a moving walkway at the airport, Salt Lake City Airport. Okay. His mom lives in Salt Lake. So I'm like, you're going home to visit your mom. And on the other side of the moving walkway, you pass young Adam from 15 years ago or 12 years ago or whatever, going to Boston to start the market out there. You recognize each other. You're very interested to talk to yourself. You go around and you connect, and what do you tell them? You know? So just think about that. Like, you think you want to know, you think you want the finish line, you think you want the answer, but here's the thing. The future that's like ready for you, you can't see it right now because you're not qualified for it yet. Right? Like, whatever opportunity comes to you 5 years from now, you can't, like, I never could have thought, like, I could never plan my career, really.
Right.
I could commit to putting in, I could commit to working, or like Casey told you, I can commit to a time frame. But what's going to happen is you're going to become more capable, and you're going to have all these serendipitous and relationships, and you're going to develop this expertise, and it's going to lead you to an opportunity that right now you can't see because you're not at the level. So once you get there, it's almost like, I don't know why I was so worried about this. It's going to be fine. It's like being in 5th grade and worrying about 11th grade calculus.
Yeah.
You're not qualified for that right now. But if you keep going to class and keep putting in, it's going to work out. It's going to be fine. You're going to learn. It's going to be all right, you know? And so I always like to think about that and I'd be interested in what you would say to that question. Actually, let me ask you that question before I answer what I think I would say.
So what would I say to my younger self?
Well, yeah, but not just your younger self. Maybe you're going out to train that team, that pest control team. And then you're thinking in your head at that point, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to start this app. I'm going to start this business. And then you, in this state with your current success, with your current life, pass by and you're like, hold on, let me talk to you for a second.
I would say one thing.
Go for it.
I would say surrender. Let go. Trust. Just trust and surrender. And to your point, there are outcomes that you cannot possibly predict, that haven't unfolded yet, that are going to influence your environment and decision-making and mindset, that have to unfold. And you have to participate in that. So I would say surrender. And what does surrender mean to me? I would say this. Surrender doesn't mean quit or give up or surrender to someone. It means fully participate in reality. And flipping that back on, you know, one of my favorite questions to ask is, how good have you been at predicting your life?
Right.
Terrible, right? Same concept, right?
Yeah.
Terrible. So given your track record, how good are you going to be at predicting your future life? Probably not very good. Right?
And especially at the rate of change.
Yeah.
Things are going to exist. Tools are going to exist. Developments are going to happen. And they're going to happen in the next 3 years that if you were to see them today, you'd be like, you can't fathom it.
Can't believe it, right?
Yeah.
So the goal isn't to get life to be the way you think that it should. The goal is to be able to handle how life unfolds and surrender to it. I mean, accept it, participate in it. So what I would say is fully participate in the moment in front of you.
That's good. I'll change my answer to that. Yeah. I like that one. It's
What
crazy.
was your response?
Well, the first thing that I don't think I have a big profound, like, your answer is good. Mine's lame. But since I asked that, I thought about it a lot. And the one thing that I keep going back to is I would be so excited. I'd be so excited to talk to myself. Now, when I came out and started a career, I mean, exiting Vivint is a hard thing to do.
It's really tough.
It's an unreal opportunity, and it's more opportunity than most people, especially in our community, find. Like, a lot of people, it's not a traditional career path, and you have to make everything yourself. So there's no certainty, and that attracts a certain type of person. It attracts a really fun person generally, but there's not a lot of safety, and there's not a lot of like certainty. That honestly, when I read The Infinite Game, that was one of my problems with that book. Is it's like, oh, people need to feel safe, and I'm like, in my world, like you have to contribute to feel safe, and so I kind of struggled with that. But I remembered just thinking I would be so excited because leaving Vivint in the pursuit of perhaps something different or better, or something that life was like now I was maybe more qualified for. I wasn't scared, but I was, and I knew it was going to work out somehow, but I was unsure. Right. And so I would just like see that person and I would just want to say, hey, it is going to be the ride of your life. You are going to thrive. But I almost don't know if I would want to know that because I was thinking about, like, you think about great athletic moments. So say, for example, you stand up on this big wave, you're surfing down it. I don't know that I would want someone to tell me, hey, as you get right at your apex speed, there's going to be a bump in the middle of the wave. You got to plan for it so you can go around it, because maybe it's going to happen and your subconscious micro movement's going to do something amazing and it's going to differentiate. You know what I'm saying? So you almost don't want the answer. But I when I think about it, I think of like this excitement for my future. And so what that makes me think now is, how excited am I for my future? How excited am I for going into the unknown? I know 52-year-old Ty would come up to 42-year-old Ty and be like, just wait. It's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows, but it's better than you're thinking. And so since I've thought about that, I've tried to have that, to be like, I don't know why I worry. Everything in my life has worked out. Everything that I've put in has in some way, shape, or form worked out. Either I've learned and it's gone, or either I've gone well and been successful, or I've learned and pivoted and found a new way through. And so I'm going to butcher it, but there's this Alan Watts quote. Do you ever read any stuff from him?
I was just about to quote Alan Watts. I've got one queued up in my head right now.
Say it. See if it's the same one I'm thinking.
The Alan Watts quote he says, the funny thing about life is that you always think you're not quite going
Bro, it's the exact quote. Keep going. Sorry, keep going.
But then you do. Right?
Yes.
But then you do.
Yes.
It's my favorite Alan Watts
quote.
Yeah.
You always think you're not going to make it, and you always make it. And there's some fun way that he's kind of like, like a rebel poet or whatever. But I always think about that where it's like, why am I always worried at the end of the quarter? Like, oh, it's not going to happen. And I'm going to die cold and alone.
Yeah.
Life always works out in some way.
Yeah, it's really cool. In my with my book, there's like this really cool data where I can see what parts, if you have a Kindle, what parts of my book people underline.
Oh, really?
Which is really cool. So
is that reserved to authors? I couldn't see what if I had a Kindle. Could I see what other people are underlining?
No. So I can see, because since my book.
Since it's your, it's like if you're hosting a GoFundMe, you can see who's. No matter, even if they're anonymous.
So I can see.
I'm going to find that Alan Watts quote. Sorry, go ahead.
So I can see what parts of my book people are highlighting, right? Kind of what's standing out. And one of my quotes in there that's, one of my more popular quotes is, I said, if you knew how good your future was going to be, you wouldn't waste your moment being anxious.
That's right.
Right? We're so anxious about the future. And you think about, when you're in 7th grade, what were you anxious about? Girls and sports.
My hair. Dude, I was a redheaded kid, it's a whole other thing. Anyway,
and you go 5 years forward, it's like, it's no
awesome.
big deal. Again, so to your point again, like that rhythm of growth, that level of growth, like we waste all this time being anxious. And it's like, if we knew how it was going to happen, if we could get one snapshot of it, it would actually, all the anxiety would just immediately fall away.
Yeah.
And then you could actually participate in your life.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. Yeah. Dude, I'm so glad you stopped by.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you came and sat at the square table.
Yeah,
hopefully you avoided some traffic on the way up to Venice. You had a rough path ahead of you, so hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So I didn't tell you this, but I got a flat tire.
Oh, really? Yeah. On the way down or on the way up?
On the way down.
Oh, really?
Well, I come out to there's another growth moment. I walk out to my
Do you drive a Tesla by chance?
I do not drive a Tesla.
Okay, so you have a spare tire.
Yeah.
This is a Tesla. That's a Tesla miss. No spare tires.
Yeah, I've got a Bronco.
Okay.
And so I, go out to my car to drive to the group to go speak this morning, and my tire's flat. And I'm like, this will be exciting. How fun. Jason, you got to come pick me up.
It's so funny because that's an option, but when it happens, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Who gets a flat tire? You probably had a couple flat tires in your life.
Yeah. It was like my second one ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I, had to put on the donut, and then we drove up here and I got my tire fixed right before I came over.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Worked out perfect timing.
Yeah. That's how it is.
Yeah.
But thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing. And everybody go check out alchemysalescoaching.com.
Yep.
Check out Holy Shit, We're Alive, the book. And yeah, thank you for joining us for another episode of Electric People.
And last piece too, I answer all of my DMs on Instagram.
You really want to put that out there?
So
Let's
if you have
test
any
it.
questions,
Let's
hit
test
me up
it.
at Doug_Cartwright. I promise you I'll respond to you, but it's been a pleasure today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Dude, that was great, man.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and interested in joining our teams, DM us on Instagram at Run the League.
What are you waiting for? Run the league, shoot us a DM, and let's get going.